Lucas was sitting at his desk, his eyes fixed on the computer screen. The sound of the keyboard was the only noise that broke the silence of the office. His work, which had previously seemed challenging, now became a monotonous routine. The days dragged on, and he felt increasingly disconnected from himself, as if he were living someone else's life. Deep down, he knew that something was missing, but he couldn't identify what it was. The feeling of emptiness slowly consumed him. It was in this moment of apathy that she appeared. An elderly woman, with an enigmatic smile, approached his desk. Lucas, a little surprised, looked up. She had a calm expression, but there was something about her that seemed not to belong in that environment. Without saying a word, she placed a small envelope on the desk and, with a deep look, walked away. Before he could ask her anything, she had already disappeared into the hallway. Intrigued, Lucas looked at the envelope. It was simple, made of yellowed paper, with impeccable handwriting that read, "This is the second time God wants to speak to you. Something big is about to happen to you." The message seemed absurdly mysterious and out of context. He frowned, hesitated for a moment, but for some reason, he felt a strange sensation run through his body. Something inside him told him that this was not a simple joke. Not knowing what to do, Lucas put the envelope in his drawer, trying to ignore the uncomfortable feeling that was starting to settle in his chest. But the phrase echoed in his mind, as if it had been recorded there, ready to reverberate in the coming days. Something big was about to happen, and he didn't know if he was ready to face it. In the following days, the phrase written on the envelope seemed to haunt Lucas at every moment. He tried to concentrate on work, but the words echoed in his mind, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. At night, his dreams were disturbed, and a feeling of restlessness kept him awake for hours. He wondered, what did it mean? Who was the woman who gave him the note? And, more importantly, why did he feel like something so big was about to happen in his life? The next morning, while drinking coffee in a quiet spot near his apartment, a sudden vision struck him. A bright light, like a ray of sunlight filtering through the clouds, filled his vision for a second. He blinked and looked around. Nothing seemed out of place, but the feeling persisted. What was it? A sign? A coincidence? He tried to convince himself that it was just his tired mind playing tricks, but the discomfort wouldn't go away. That night, just as he was about to fall asleep, the vision returned. But this time it was different. He saw a figure in the thick fog, a shadow that seemed familiar but he couldn't place. The figure approached slowly, and Lucas felt a strange magnetism. Before he could understand what was happening, the vision disappeared, leaving him with a racing heart. The next morning, he went to the local bookstore, looking for a distraction. Among the shelves of old books, something caught his eye. A small book, with a worn cover and an incomplete title, seemed to be calling to him. Without hesitation, he picked it up, flipping through the pages until he came across a sentence that made him stop abruptly. The divine message is like a light, which we do not always see until we are ready. Lucas's restlessness continued to grow. The visions became more frequent, and he could no longer ignore them. He felt that something was being revealed to him, something that he could not immediately understand. The feeling that there was a greater purpose, something divine waiting to be discovered, was becoming impossible to ignore. Yet, at the same time, he felt fear and resistance. He did not know where to begin his search for answers, but he knew that he had to follow this path, no matter how uncomfortable it was. It was then that he decided to seek out someone who could help him understand what was happening. Lucas knew that the answer would not come from books or logic, but from something deeper. After some research, he came across the name of a spiritual mentor, a priest named Father Gabriel, who was known for his wisdom and guidance. Lucas hesitated, but something inside him urged him to take the first step. When Lucas entered the small church where Father Gabriel often offered counsel, the atmosphere felt welcoming, as if he were entering a sacred space where answers were waiting to be revealed. The priest, a grey-haired man with a serene gaze, greeted him with a welcoming smile. "Have you come to seek answers, my son?" he asked, with a calmness that made Lucas feel at ease. Lucas, a little nervous, sat down and began to explain the visions and the enigmatic note he had received. He spoke of the strange sensations that haunted him and the messages that seemed to come from somewhere beyond his understanding. Father Gabriel listened attentively, without interrupting, and when Lucas finished, he smiled softly. "God has a peculiar way of calling us," the priest said in a soft but firm voice. Sometimes He sends us signs that we cannot immediately understand, but which are essential for our spiritual growth. What you are experiencing, Lucas, is an awakening. An awakening to the divine purpose that is waiting for you. Lucas felt both relieved and more confused. How could he be called by something so great? How could he know what his purpose was? Father Gabriel, as if reading his thoughts, added, "The path to understanding God's purpose in our lives is not always clear, but it is through faith that we can see beyond what meets the eye. Everyone's journey is unique, and you are at the beginning of your journey." In the days that followed his encounter with Father Gabriel, Lucas felt that his life had taken an unexpected turn. The priest's words echoed in his mind constantly. He had always looked for answers in his career, in his relationships, but he had never considered looking for something beyond that. Something bigger. Something spiritual. The awakening to this new path seemed frightening, but also intriguing. Lucas knew he needed more clarification, and he was determined to understand what was happening to him. It was during a visit to the park, while trying to process everything he had experienced so far, that Lucas had another mysterious encounter. He was sitting on a bench, watching the children playing and the couples strolling. Life around him seemed peaceful, but he felt a weight inside him. Suddenly, a strange figure approached. She was an elderly woman with long white hair and piercing eyes. She wore a dark robe and carried a book in her hands. The woman stood before him and looked straight into Lucas's eyes, as if she knew something deep about him. "You are searching for answers, Lucas," she said in a calm but unforgiving voice. "The questions you have are legitimate, but they are only scratching the surface of something much greater." Lucas looked surprised, not knowing how she knew his name or what was happening in his life. The woman smiled slightly and opened the book, revealing ancient pages, with Latin writing that he could not read. "What you are experiencing, Lucas, has already been prophesied. Your spiritual awakening is not a coincidence. You have been chosen for a divine mission." She read a passage from the book in a low voice. "In times of great confusion, the chosen one will be called. He will see the light where others see darkness, and his journey will lead him to discover the power that lies within himself." Lucas was astonished. A divine mission? He was beginning to understand that his life would never be the same again. He had a purpose to fulfill, and no matter how much he tried to convince himself otherwise, the weight of this revelation was already upon him. The woman closed the book, handing it to Lucas. "This is the beginning of a journey that you must follow," she said, before silently walking away, disappearing into the crowd. Lucas stood there, with the book in his hands, stunned. He didn't know what to do with the information he had just received, but he felt that he was facing something that would change everything. Lucas spent the night awake, reflecting on his encounter with the woman in the park. The book she had given him was on his desk. The mystery of the words engraved in Latin still intrigued him. He knew that something much greater than he could understand was happening, but the feeling of insecurity dominated him. How could he, such an ordinary and skeptical person, be called to a divine mission? Doubt consumed him, and he could not shake it. In the following weeks, Lucas tried to continue with his routine, but the visions and signs continued to appear. During a work meeting, he briefly saw, among the documents on his desk, the same figure that had appeared to him in the park. The woman, with her piercing eyes, watched him as if she were waiting for something. When he blinked, the vision disappeared, but the discomfort remained. He knew he was being pulled towards something he did not understand, and it terrified him. However, Lucas knew he could not ignore it any longer. Something inside him screamed for him to surrender to the journey that seemed to have been mapped out for him, but the fear and resistance were immense. He knew that the greatest challenge was not what was in front of him, but what was inside him. His insecurities, his fears, the doubts he had always had about his own abilities, all of this seemed to surface now, like an invisible wall that prevented him from moving forward. It was during a stormy night that Lucas finally made the decision. He was alone in his apartment, looking out the window as the rain fell heavily. The sky was dark, and lightning illuminated the city. He felt the tension inside him increase, as if he were being pushed towards something he could not avoid. It was then that a soft but firm voice sounded in his mind. "You are afraid to move forward, Lucas. But fear is just an obstacle. It is not real. It is a creation of your mind." Lucas closed his eyes, and a feeling of warmth and peace took over his body. For the first time, he felt like he could overcome the internal barriers that had kept him stuck for so long. He knew he was being guided by something greater, something he couldn't control but that he needed to learn to trust. That night, he said a heartfelt prayer, asking for strength to face what lay ahead. He committed to taking the first step, not knowing exactly what that meant, but trusting that he would be shown the way. When he finished, he felt an immediate sense of relief, as if he had released a weight that had been weighing him down for years. He knew the next step would not be easy, but he was ready to face it. As he looked out the window, he felt a presence beside him, as if someone were there, waiting for him. It was no longer a terrifying vision, but a sense of companionship. Something was accompanying him on his journey, and for the first time, Lucas felt prepared for the challenge that awaited him. The next day, Lucas woke up feeling different. Something inside him had changed, as if he had been freed from an invisible burden. He felt an unusual peace, as if he had connected with something beyond himself. As he looked at the book that the woman in the park had given him, he felt a growing need to understand its mysterious content. With a deep sigh, he decided that he was ready to begin the journey that awaited him. He knew that he could no longer live in inertia, waiting for the answers to fall from the sky. The book seemed to have a purpose, and Lucas felt that he was being guided by it, although he still did not know exactly where that path would lead him. What he knew for sure was that he was ready to take the first step and follow the direction that the universe, or something greater, had laid out for him. With the book in hand, Lucas headed to the city library, where he would spend the next few hours trying to decipher the Latin content. The place was peaceful, and the silent environment seemed to be the perfect setting for his search. As he leafed through the pages, the esoteric writing defied his comprehension, but somehow, he felt that something was beginning to fit together. It wasn't just the literal meaning of the words that he needed to understand, but what they represented on a deeper level. For hours he pored through the book, turning from page to page, until finally, on one of the last pages, he found a partial translation of what seemed to be the key to his mission. The passage, now translated, read, "In the heart of doubt, the true path will be revealed. The chosen one will see beyond the veil, and as he follows the path of truth, he will find the light that will guide him." Lucas paused, absorbing these words. It was clear guidance, but at the same time, vague. What was the path of truth? And what did it mean to see beyond the veil? The answer seemed to be right in front of him, but his mind was still surrounded by uncertainty. He felt that the next step needed to be taken, but he didn't know which direction to take. He closed the book and stood up from the table. Suddenly, something in the air felt different. The environment around him changed subtly, as if he were about to cross an invisible line. His heart beat faster, and a sense that something big was about to happen washed over him. Lucas knew he was about to enter unknown territory, but he could no longer turn back. He was prepared to move forward, even without knowing exactly what awaited him. Whatever it was, he now felt that he was not alone. There was a presence, an invisible guide, accompanying him. And with that, he was determined to discover what else was in store for him on this mysterious journey. Lucas felt that he had reached the limit of his doubts. After weeks of searching and introspection, he could feel the weight of uncertainty beginning to lift, giving way to a growing clarity. However, there was still a sense that something was missing, an essential key that he needed to discover in order to continue the journey he had begun. He knew that the answer lay not only in books or in Father Gabriel's words, but in something deeper, in a kind of revelation he had not yet experienced. It was then that, on a cold, cloudy afternoon, Lucas had a vivid dream. He was in a dense forest, with tall, imposing trees. The feeling of being lost was intense, but there was something irresistible that drew him forward. The soft sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, as if someone were walking through the trees. He followed the sounds until he found a clearing illuminated by a soft, golden light. In the center of the clearing was a large stone, carved in a mysterious way, with symbols engraved on its surface. As he approached, Lucas saw a familiar figure, with gray hair and piercing eyes. It was the woman from the park, in her dark robe and the book in her hands. She looked at Lucas with a serene smile, as if she had been waiting for him. "You have finally arrived, Lucas," she said, her voice soft but full of ancient wisdom. "What you seek is before you, but the key to unlocking that truth lies within yourself." Lucas felt a rush of understanding and confusion at the same time. He was in the right place, but he still didn't understand what it meant. "What should I do?" he asked, his voice shaking with curiosity and anxiety. The woman pointed to the stone in the center of the clearing. "The symbols you see here are a reflection of the truth you must find." The path to truth is hidden within your own soul, and you must learn to look beyond what meets the eye. With a slow, deliberate movement, she opened the book and began to recite words in a language Lucas didn't understand. As she spoke, the stone began to glow with an intense light, and the symbols engraved upon it began to move, as if they were taking on a life of their own. Lucas tried to make sense of what was happening, but the woman's words seemed to create a wave of energy that completely enveloped him. When you open yourself completely to the truth that lies within you, the veil will be lifted, she said, as the light from the stone intensified. And that is when you will realize your true mission. Suddenly, the dream dissipated, and Lucas woke up in his bed, sweaty and with his heart racing. He was confused, but something inside him had changed. He didn't know what the revelation meant yet, but he knew he was now closer to understanding what lay ahead. The path was revealing itself, and he could no longer ignore it. The next day seemed to carry a different weight. Lucas was more alert, as if the world around him had acquired a new dimension. The dream from the night before still echoed in his mind, leaving him with an indescribable feeling that something much bigger was at stake. He knew he needed to act quickly, to move forward with the mission that he still did not fully understand, but that he felt in his heart. Determined to seek more answers, Lucas returned to the library, where he had spent so much time trying to understand the contents of the book that the woman had given him. He knew he could not waste time. Something inside him indicated that the time to act had come. As he searched the shelves for more clues, something caught his attention. An old, leather-bound book was out of place, on a shelf that was rarely visited. He carefully removed it, feeling that this would be the right book. When he opened the cover, he found a familiar inscription, the same symbols from the dream. This made him stop for a moment, his heart racing. It was the same kind of language he had seen on the stone in the clearing. With his eyes fixed on the book, Lucas began to leaf through it slowly, absorbing each word. The pages were yellowed and fragile, but the words were clearly engraved. He read quietly, trying to grasp the meaning. The book spoke of a guardian, an enigmatic figure tasked with protecting the secret of truth. And, according to the text, this guardian would only reveal himself to those who were truly ready to face the light. Lucas felt a chill as he realized he was being called to something far beyond his comprehension. He closed the book and put it back on the shelf, determined to follow what seemed to be the last clue, finding the guardian. During the following days, Lucas was guided by a growing instinct, which led him to a small church in the center of the city. It was a quiet, almost isolated place, with few visitors. The entrance was adorned with colored stained glass windows that cast soft light on the interior walls, creating an atmosphere of introspection. Something told him that he should enter there. As he entered the church, Lucas felt an unusual calm, as if he were in a sacred place where answers could be found. He walked through the narrow side streets of the church until he reached the altar, where a solitary figure was kneeling, as if in prayer. When the person turned around, Lucas felt his heart race. It was the man he had seen in his dreams, the guardian. "You have finally arrived, Lucas," the man said, his voice deep and calm. His eyes were piercing and full of wisdom. "I have been waiting for you." Lucas did not know what to say. He was paralyzed by surprise, but he felt an inexplicable calm taking over him. The guardian, with a slight smile, gestured for Lucas to come closer. "You are searching for the truth, but know that the path to truth is not easy. It requires more than understanding. It requires transformation. Only when you are ready to embrace the totality of what lies ahead will you be able to complete your mission." The guardian's words echoed in his mind, and Lucas felt that the journey was finally beginning to make sense. He was no longer alone. A greater force was guiding him, and he was beginning to understand that each step was preparing him for the truth that would eventually be revealed. The guardian led Lucas to a secret room in the back of the church, a place that seemed hidden from the world. The walls were adorned with ancient manuscripts and symbols that Lucas immediately recognized from the book he had studied. There, in the sacred silence of that space, he sensed that something of great importance was about to happen. "You have come here because you are the chosen one," the guardian said, his voice resonating with deep power. "But the truth you seek is not just in the written words. It is within you, waiting to be awakened." Lucas looked around, unsure of what to expect. He felt a mix of anxiety and curiosity, but also a growing sense that he was on the right path. The guardian seemed to be waiting for something. He gestured with his hand, as if inviting Lucas to come forward. "Come in," the guardian said, pointing to a door at the back of the room. Lucas obeyed, taking a hesitant step toward the stranger. Opening the door, he entered a small chamber lit only by candles. In the center of the room was a table with a single object, a wooden box decorated with the same symbols he had seen in the book and in the dream. "Come closer," the guardian said, his voice soft but full of authority. Lucas approached the table, his heart racing. He knew that this box held the key to everything he had sought. With trembling hands, he lifted the lid, and what he found inside made his heart almost stop. Inside the box was the medallion, the same one he had seen in his dreams, with the symbols engraved on its surface. "This is the true symbol of the path," the guardian explained. "The medallion represents the inner journey you must take to awaken the truth in your heart. It is the key to unlocking the light that is within you." Lucas held the medallion in his hands, feeling the gentle warmth emanating from it. As he touched it, something strange happened. He felt a wave of energy running through his body, a feeling of deep connection with the universe, as if all the knowledge and wisdom of the world were merging within his mind. He closed his eyes and suddenly saw a vision. The image was clear. He was in the center of a large city, surrounded by people, but they all seemed blind, living their lives without realizing the truth around them. It was as if he were the only person who could see the hidden reality, a reality beyond appearances. "What did you see?" the guardian asked, watching Lucas closely. I saw the truth," Lucas replied, his voice low but firm. "I saw that truth is not found in words, nor in symbols, but in how we see the world around us. It is found in our actions, in our hearts. True light only reveals itself when we choose to live with courage and love, no matter the hardships." The guardian smiled, his eyes shining with approval. "You understand now. Truth is not a destination to be reached, but a journey that begins within you. The path you take is what defines who you are." Lucas felt a wave of gratitude wash over his heart. He knew that, although the journey had been difficult, he had finally found the peace he had been searching for. Truth was not something to be found externally, but something that needed to be awakened from within. The guardian gave him one last look, full of wisdom. "Now you are ready to follow your path, Lucas. The world is waiting for you." With the medallion in hand, Lucas knew his mission was just beginning. He was ready to live the truth, to be the light in a world that was often lost in darkness. Lucas left the church with the medallion in hand, a sense of clarity filling his being. He knew that the journey was not over, but rather, had only just begun. The guardian had given him more than the key to truth. He had given him the power to turn that truth into action. The world around him seemed different now, more vivid, more real. He knew he had a mission greater than himself, a mission that transcended anything he had ever imagined. As he walked through the streets of the city, Lucas reflected on all he had learned. He now understood that the search for truth was not an external quest, but an internal journey, where every experience, every person who crossed his path, represented an opportunity to live according to the principles he had awakened within himself. Truth, he knew, was not something to be found. It was something to be lived. His first stop was the park, where he had first seen the woman in the dark cloak. She was no longer there, but Lucas felt her presence, as if she had become a part of him. He sat on a bench, meditating on everything that had happened. The medallion was warm in his hands, a constant reminder of his transformation. At that moment, Lucas heard a soft sound approaching, like the rustling of leaves in the wind. He looked up and, in the distance, saw Father Gabriel coming toward him. The priest smiled when he saw him, but his eyes were filled with a quiet wisdom, as if he knew exactly what Lucas had experienced. "So you have found the truth," the priest said, his voice calm but full of meaning. "I have found more than the truth," Lucas replied, with a soft smile. "I have found the way." Father Gabriel nodded, as if he had expected this answer. The path of truth is never easy, but it is the only one truly worth following. Now, you have a mission to share that light with others. The world needs people who choose to see beyond the darkness, who choose to live with love and courage, as you have. Lucas knew he could no longer live in the comfort of ignorance. He was no longer just seeking answers for himself, but he understood that he had a role to play in the lives of others. His inner journey would not end there. It would begin again, this time with the mission of inspiring those around him to also seek the truth that lay within them. With a wave of farewell, Lucas stood up from the bench and looked out into the distance, feeling more connected to the world than ever before. The future ahead of him was full of possibilities, but he was ready to face it with courage, with a heart full of light. As he walked into the next phase of his life, he felt, for the first time, that he was truly home. He had found his purpose, and he knew that with the power of truth within him, there was nothing that could stop him from walking the path he had chosen. The world was waiting for him, and Lucas was more prepared than ever to make a difference. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this transformative message. If you felt the power of this word and believe in what God is preparing for your life, confirm receipt with the number 333 in the comments. Remember, the path of light is only walked by those who choose to follow it. So, subscribe to our channel, activate the notification bell and stay tuned, because soon we will have new messages from the angels, revelations that will deeply touch your heart. May divine peace be present in every step you take, now and always. We are together on this journey.